Hi everyone, I'm Matt from Paramount Sales and welcome to Paramount Profiles, the series where I sit down with the leaders of some of the most exciting emerging B2B companies today. Now, during this series of interviews, I hope to learn more about what led them to starting their own business, understand their successes and their failures, as well as explore what the future holds for them as we roll into 2025. Now, in this debut episode of Paramount Profiles, I sat down with John Conway, the CEO and founder of iota-ML. Now, during our conversation, we discussed why he went from being in full-time employment to being a freelance consultant to then making the jump with his co-founders to create his own tech product in iota-ML. We'll also explore some of the go-to-market challenges that they faced and how they landed a massive client like Volvo in their early days. We'll also look at what the future holds for him as they begin to roll out the latest version of their platform early next year. So for a bit of context, iota-ML is an incredible platform which uses machine learning to help businesses understand their customers' interests and their behavior, which they can then in turn use to create more personalized communications and deliver better engagement. Look, I've known John for a long time. He's a great guy. I was delighted to get the opportunity to sit down with him to do this interview. And he's very, very passionate about what he does that really comes through in the conversation. I thought it was a very insightful chat, and I really hope you guys enjoy it. So without further ado, let's get into it. So, John, welcome.
Thanks, Matt. Nice to be here.
Oh, absolute pleasure to have you, mate. Absolute pleasure to have you. So, look, what I usually do on these videos is start with just saying, how do we know each other? So, a bit of background for everyone watching. So, John and I, many, many moons ago, we worked together at a cart-linked marketing company where John was arguably our sort of top analyst at the time, and I was nothing more than a mere salesperson. And obviously, John, you've gone on to sort of a lot bigger, better things, obviously, since then, which we'll talk about. And when I started Paramount Sales and Paramount Partners, John was one of the first people to join the network, which was fantastic. So John, look, really delighted you joined us today. What I want to do is sort of go on to talk a little bit about your background and sort of what led you to starting iota. And so, yeah, so what led you here as part of the journey?
Well, I'll start from the beginning, Matt. So I'm analytical by personality. So I kind of got a job as an analyst when I was 21 years old. I had a lucky escape. I worked for an insurance brand, and I was involved in doing a job which was like forecasting and some of these things that insurance companies have to do. But on the floor of my building, when I used to look across the floor, there was a whole bunch of people that were dressed differently. So they weren't in suits. They were in like shorts and t-shirt in the summer, and hoodies in the winter. They were regularly breaking out for rounds of applause, and like cakes were turning up every week. Matt, this was the marketing department. Okay. So beautiful. I thought I've got to get over here. So I made it my business to find out what marketing was all about. And there was an analytics manager over there that, I would take to the pub for a beer and ask him questions. And it caught my attention because he would say, marketing is the closest thing to like medical science from being an analyst, like how you have to study stuff. And this really caught my attention. So fast forwarding, I was at RSA Group, was the group for 10 years and did 5 different roles. And it was various things, marketing analyst, team lead, through to my final role was like what you'd call head of decisioning, which is really this idea of controlling customer management. And every time a customer touches the company in some way, there's some pieces of data that back up what we should do. So it's a bit like a mix of predictive analytics and what some people would recognize as a next best action program, where you're trying to figure out what's the optimal thing you can do at any moment. I moved on to moneysupermarket.com because they're a big digital brand. So it happens to be they're still in financial services, but what caught my eye was that they had the most customer data of pretty much anyone in Britain at the time. They had a digital marketing setup that was the leading in Britain at the time. This video is not about what they had and what they did, but people can DM me and find out. So they had a mixed tech stack of digital marketing and customer data marketing that meant that I had to go there. And this is where the seeds of iota were sown, really. The challenge there was to try to defend Money Supermarket's position against competitors. So one way that you do it is with lots of direct marketing. So how do you own the customer is the idea there. So we worked on a personalization platform, and it was very similar to what iota had become. So I went on from Money Supermarket and actually had a detour out of marketing into what I always call data monetization. So I worked for two brands, a startup brand, and then Cardlytics, where we met. So this was a lot where, how do you take a data source and work with partners to commercialize it? So you talked about card linked. This is the idea of brands can use payment data either for campaign activity or, on the other side, insights. So purchase intelligence is something that's not that prevalent unless you run a loyalty program. So these were really exciting times, but it was a bit different to what I'd done before. I promise I will get there. So this was all my background. I subsequently became a consultant. So I wanted to be free and do my own things. Started off with consultancy assignments. And the pieces of the puzzle that came together were that my first couple of consultancy jobs were then back on CRM after all that time. So roughly it was about 7 or 8 year break. And I thought CRM was, I knew the spend in the sector was going up. Like Martech more spend was kind of flowing in to tools and platforms. But when I did those jobs as a consultant, I found that I was having meetings where I would talk about the same things that I was talking about at age 21. And it began to dawn on me that for most marketers, their life is not that much further forward. So being direct, what we were doing at RSA was actually quite innovative at the time, with all these predictions and different things that drove the actions. And the rest of the world, well, at least the sample of two that I hadn't quite caught up. So there was this part of it, and also just really the application of data for campaigns. So my job is to sit there and listen when people say, how do I make my campaigns more engaging? My boss wants me to use data to make these campaigns better. What do I do? So those questions were being asked even if there was an analytical group, in the company. So again, the penny that was dropping to me is that sometimes the analytical communities were either not focused on marketing as much, or were getting dragged somewhere else. So revenue management is one thing, and like explaining sales volumes and commercial problems and product analytics. There was at least where I was on consultancy assignment, fewer analytics resource on the marketing side. So putting all that together, I was feeling like, right. Well, and Matt, they also had tech they couldn't use. Okay, yeah. So they used big marketing clouds were the platforms for the marketing campaigns. Couldn't use it. Army of consultants and admins swarming around to help them just send. Not even the data intelligence, just to ship the campaign in the most basic form. So that combination of things is what led to iota. I had the feeling that what marketers need is something they can use themselves that helps them make their campaigning better, but requires minimal use of IT, data scientist, or something that's the people blocker as to why can't they do this. So we chose to put iota together. The story there was that we were a pandemic brand. I had the idea for it. Again, the seeds were sown at some of the things we did at Money Supermarket, and then what I saw consulting. And the final piece of the story was that it was just during the first lockdown, like literally the first month of 2020, March 2020, if folk remember that. I was telling my wife all this, and I was like, "Oh man, I've got to corroborate this with somebody else. I'm going to just text this one person I know. She was the lead at a big retail brand with, I don't know, 6 billion revenue, global stores, 3,000 stores globally, big loyalty program. And I thought, if this person says that like the application of data science there is poor or non-existent, then I'm going to do this. Anyway, I've got a funny slide that shows her response. She said, there's loads can be improved where we are. And that was it, Matt. It was game time. So I had to then find a founding team to start things off.
No, it sounds it sounds great. It's great. Obviously, you identified obviously a gap, not necessarily in the market, but a gap within sort of a company's process as well, in terms of try and find something to plug that gap. Now we'll come on to iota in a second and talk to you and give you the opportunity to give a little bit more of an overview about the platform and into more detail about how you're trying to address those gaps we just mentioned. But I want to go back a little bit further. Obviously, you and I and lots of people that I speak to took that jump from being a full-time employee to being a consultant and basically working for yourself. And, iota is one of many projects that you are personally involved in. So take me back to obviously that decision in terms of why you wanted to be an employee in full-time employment with the job security that everyone associates with full-time employment in a lot of cases, to being your own boss. So tell me sort of what led you on that journey, why you wanted to go down that route.
Yeah, it's probably quite a funny story, Matt. So I was originally living, when we were together, when we were working together I was living in Sussex.
Mm-hmm.
I hope this doesn't trigger anybody watching this, but I lived through the Southern Rail meltdown of 2016. So I was one of these people getting the train to work every day.
Remember it well.
Yeah, it should be 1 hour, but this rail system began to melt down, and it used to creep up and up and up. It started taking me 2 hours each way, and I sort of had one little epiphany, which was on Clapham Junction platform. Like, I don't know when, December, freezing cold, 5 trains in a row cancelled, and it was like 11 p.m. and I still wasn't home. And I thought, wow, this has got to change. So on the one side, I loved a permanent role. I loved working in central London, loved the team, but that was just not something I wanted to continue doing. It was just a drain.
Mm-hmm.
Funnily enough, my father-in-law was also a consultant, so I got to watch him up close for the years that it's now my wife. But as I got to know her, I'd watching this guy up close. I'm like, oh, I'm a consultant. I'm like, well, hang on. He's in Goa 1 week. He's in like New Zealand the next week, and this guy is just kind of going around the world taking care of his things. But he's kind of got this amazing freedom. So putting these two together was actually one of the kind of the exciting part of, well, I
Mm-hmm.
don't have to go on the train. I can choose, and I can sort of have some of these freedoms. That was like the two exciting parts that got the thought process going. And as for the rest of it, I wish I had a strong plan to tell you about, but really it was a complete accident. I think what really happened is I had I'd left Cardlytics and took a couple of months break, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
And in that time was just pondering what I should do. And I just got a contract offer and took it. It was just complete fluke. But
Yeah.
the first one is always the like, oh, like, can I do this? You got to do these small things of like, oh no, I've got to do my own accounts. I was 30 something years old, but was feeling overwhelmed of just, I've never done this.
Mm-hmm.
What is it all about? So I think I had a gentle start in that I got a contract offer that landed on my lap. It ended up lasting, it was a contract offer for 30 days that ended up being nearly 2 years. So it was a real safe slide into it where I could, I did well. I managed to work for lots of different departments there. It was at Eurostar travel company. So I got to work with lots of different people, good experiences, and kept getting renewed. So it gave me, I could slowly get used to being, independent. And then to rewind on, the thrust of this video is what we're doing with iota. And you say I've got lots of projects. Matt, this is a necessity. Yeah. What there is there's this kind of mix of, it looks like I run a portfolio. Really, it's that there's a mix of long shots, things that will pay off, and that I'm working on. Like iota is one. There are things that I've just worked on for a long time with people I've had relationships with for a long time. So I don't want to drop those. And then sometimes you need to get paid. So sometimes you take a project opportunity. Guys, I love all your projects. Anyone work with me? But we need to feed my family. So there's this constant, what do you call it? Mix that you need to achieve. To finish that answer, iota was really about, Matt, the brainwave. It's so naive now. The brainwave was that I'd done a few years as an independent consultant, and what you begin to find after you do it for a little while is you begin to think, well, hang on, I'm exchanging my time for money. You begin to feel quite connected. It's why sometimes you work a lot or you overwork when you're independent. It's not quite Goa and New Zealand and all those things I said, you tend to, someone says jump, you tend to ask how high. But in your permanent role, you'd say, I'll do it Monday for you. So um, so iota, I thought, would kind of fit with something I wanted to build, but it might be a way to have a product company that disentangles the exchange of time for money. What we could do is come up with a pricing and a way of managing it so that the founding team would be more comfortable. It's not just kind of day rates or running, like, oh, if I have 2 weeks off, we don't get paid there. What we wanted was a bunch of accounts that we can manage and work with people to make things better, but somehow the revenue picture is not quite as stressful as always having to find work. Now, I use the word naive. The naive part is the thing that I've learned. We've done this 2.5 years. The naive part was not necessarily appreciating the amount of time that you sink into business development.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's finding the balance, isn't it, between, like you said, paid work, passion projects, and all this kind of stuff that you're referring to, but then it's the business development, it's the unpaid work that can obviously be the biggest strain on your time. Now, let's talk about iota now. Obviously, when you worked in Eurostar for a number of times, that would have been a great jump from working from a B2B company to working brand side to then obviously developing a product, for brands, basically creating a B2B company. Now, obviously, when you started iota, you got a pretty big win pretty early, I think it's fair to say. So tell us a little bit about some of the sort of the big wins you had in that kind of first stage, and what really gave you the confidence to knowing that iota-ML is a platform that would work.
Yeah, it's probably like I don't know, maybe 3 parts to it, Matt, that I could build on, if you like.
Please, yeah, absolutely.
And I talked earlier on the importance of like the founding team for this. So this is not something I could do alone. And this is like one of those fluky moments that's just like unbelievable. But finding some like-minded people to work with is, I think, quite hard for founders that want to build a product. So that happened for me quite quickly. I managed to shout out Pete. Pete is someone that was brought to me. He's our CTO at our company, and Pete is like me, like what I described, like the solopreneur, like enjoys freedoms, likes working on projects that he likes. So long story short, I got a guy that is capable of building anything that is philosophically aligned with me. Like, I would rather build something that I am hyped on, even if it's actually a very difficult path for me to choose. So that was a real trigger, Matt, because even the early versions of what we were able to produce, I could see it would work. So even like what you would think of as a prototype, I'd be like, this thing is alive. We've gone from like, and I actually have the first ever brief email that I'd sent to Pete. We have other engineers and other founding members too, but I've got this email that I've sent out every year since we started. So it's got 10 bullet points on it, and it's written in like pseudo product language by me. So it's a bit like, someone must press a button and this must happen. Someone must do this and then that must happen. I had this early vision. Cutting the long story short, that was done in a month. So really, really out of the gate, finding the right person, I was like, okay, we have something here that means we can demo. So that happened really fast. Of like, hey, a system we can book calls with to show prospective customers what we have. You referred to the takeoff moment. So the takeoff moment is that not our first partner, but our second partner was Volvo Cars. So what happened here was really like a replication of when I said I saw these things when I was a consultant. Same problems, like substantial data asset, not the gearing on the CRM team to act on it, the wrong orientation of agency support to in-house team, and these sort of blockers to just using their data for their campaign strategy. So I was in dialogue with them, and it's a great story. Senior director there just sort of said, John, what do I have to do to have the world's best CRM? When I was probably complaining one day at saying, like, this isn't fast enough. You're not using any segmentation. You're not using there's no feedback loop, so results don't affect the next campaign. There were all these things I was probably whining about speaking to them, and that was the question I got. What do I have to do to be the world's best? And I hit it full of gumption and said, well, I'm building that right now. You could be one of the early partners for this. And so I was able to keep that dialogue going. And because I was understanding the use cases they had, signing a brand like that so early was exhilarating.
I can imagine.
Painful in equal measure. We were still building, so we had our PowerPoint slide said we go live in 30 days at full power and at full pace. This is possible. But it was we were still new at doing this. So to see kind of more diverse data that they had, and even onboarding a big brand, you have to go through the mangle. So you have to do like cybersecurity things that I am now quite schooled in, like responding to big brands' cybersecurity protocols, and we have an advisor that supports us on that. I found one, but that was the kind of thing of like, hey, I thought we were, going to get this going for the marketing division. When someone thrusts in front of me, hey, here's our cybersecurity checklist you need to fulfill, and it's got like 500 questions on, it's a big ask. So anyway, look, we had a big win with it, but we managed to get through it and were able to launch with them. And then I suppose the last part of a sort of a win and how it came together was, a few months later, we were at the Inbox Expo, which is an email marketing conference out in Valencia. And this was just a sweet moment, Matt. We'd done it. We'd done 9 months on applying the system, implementing the use cases, did a loop on measurement. It was particularly cool because I didn't support the measurement. The in-house team did it. And we're coming back with our impact statistics of like, here's what we used to do. And here's how the test audience is performing that's coming from IOTA. So I was independent in that measurement, but all the numbers were up and really impactful. So it was kind of like the chance to get those numbers and then be on a stage to tell the story with a Volvo representative was an awesome moment.
No, I think you've listed some obviously some really proud milestones. I think that, I said from putting your effort into seeing the product live for the first time, albeit in a demo form, to closing out such a big brand like Volvo. I mean, pretty much every startup that I know would love to, one of their first couple brands to be a brand like Volvo, and then to obviously see it perform, right? And I know all those challenges you talk about. I mean, I've predominantly worked with enterprise brands my entire career, and every single one of them will have their challenges in terms of procurement or red tape, and to go through that, which I know your background is in sales. So to go through that, was a steep learning curve. So yeah, it's an amazing story about how you got started. And I know a lot of these videos and those case studies that you refer to, I think they're all on your website and also your YouTube channel as well. So I'm sure that somehow I'll figure out how to put all links at the bottom of this video for people to go and explore further. So let's take back. So you've signed Volvo. You're working with Volvo. Obviously, tell us about what some of the other challenges that you face. I think that it's really interesting. I think as a founder or CEO of a company, not just to focus on your wins, but also focus on some of the challenges and sort of areas of improvement, whether that's from a product side or it's a go-to-market standpoint. And we'll come on to later, obviously, the plan that we're looking at to do in the future. But what are some of the key things that you learned in that first year to 18 months?
There's probably two sides I would come back to. There are team things. So keeping a team running full throttle when it's all, just a moment ago I said, you meet people that are like philosophically aligned to the way that you are. The way we are is in a way lots of portfolio working, fractional approaches. So there is that thing of how to keep moving forwards with I suppose it's limited resources. The resources are like guaranteed because they're a co-founding team. The people involved own part of the company, but we're having to balance availability of people and resource like utilization
Mm-hmm.
with what we need to do for sales, demos, developing features.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm mentioning it without a solution. I can sit here and say, Matt, I don't know if I've cracked this. My only advice to anybody is, you get into it anyway, allowing enough contingency on everything that you're working on. Just
Mm-hmm.
because, when you're in startup mode, it is tricky to ask someone for like, could you just do that few more hours this evening to help us get over this hump on something that we're doing?
Yeah.
And sorry, we just don't have any revenue at the moment. So until we have more funding, we can't pay you either. And I know you
Mm-hmm.
own some of the company, but this is like, well, so what? Owning some of the company is only valuable at some future state where we either take, if we took an investment or we were sold or something like this. So it's all exciting when there's shareholdings and advisory packages, but there's a limited amount of persuasion that you can apply with that when you move forward. So look, Matt, there's all this people side, and we've had different people come through and so on and so forth. But the co-founding team are still there. So things learned, but I
Mm-hmm.
definitely couldn't write a book on how to do it. Now the other
That'll
side,
take up too much time anyway.
yeah, I mean, look, the other side is like, Matt, why you're here. So we worked together at Carlytics. You were running sales for a whole territory. My team would support you with analytics and all those sorts of things. So I'd seen what you can do. And you talk about like, go to market, and that's really where I had little experience in this. And on reflection, we sort of have done everything. We've tried everything for growth, and it's just a mixed bag of success. So I can sort of tell you that I have learned. We've tried content marketing, sort of on the LinkedIn platform, and it probably works depending on what you measure. There's like this is the learning, like
Yeah.
lots of engagement, like it's machine learning, and what it can do is a high engagement category. Sort of translating that into calls and demo calls is like, aha. So I had no experience of this. I was just stoked to see that we can drive engagement and interest in our product, but then the conversion to, I suppose it's for lots of salespeople, like, how do we move through the funnel? I was less knowledgeable at some of that, and then we sort of have moved through different phases. Really, the Volvo account meant we could take an events strategy and do presentations at conferences and so on, and we've done that. That is pretty interesting. I know a lot of people will listen to this and just think, this is what's the ROI on that? Is really hard to figure out.
Yeah, in the short term, especially.
You've seen me snap at our own team when we talk about ROI. It's extremely difficult to figure out when you're small. Of like, well, hang on, people 2 years later tell me, oh God, I remember that thing when you were at Valencia. I'm like, oh, yeah, cool. So like the concept of awareness is real for all brands, and we've had 3 big events, Matt, and they all paid off in some way, in terms of either new connections or something. But it's probably the immediate results that you're seeking are probably not part of it. So I can kind of say, go to market. I feel like I've learned, LinkedIn and the role of social, I'm learning about, and probably has to be done a different way. Hoping for your help with that. The event side, I think, is a good shout for probably early in a brand's life cycle. I don't believe we need to do as much of that going forwards. Time will tell. And lastly, we tried lots of direct channels. So as you know, we've there are quite on paper it's good value to try like prospecting platforms that do like email marketing campaigns and try to reach your buyers potential buyers in quite a targeted way. You've been close to that, and we have explored that. Negligible results. So it kind of the learnings are go to market stuff is difficult. The times that it works, what I can tell you is the times it works best. The times it works best is when it's probably so bleeding obvious, it's untrue, but when you get to spend time with a customer and you actually get down to, hey, what is the use case? Can you tell me a bit more about this? And my experience comes into play then. So people like it. Yeah, people like it when they I listen and I say, here's where I've seen this before. Here's what we've done somewhere else. Here's why it went well. And when we reach that point, we move forward nicely. It's the kind of, I suppose it'd be like the nailing the upper funnel bit, nailing our awareness and movement through funnel. That top part of it is harder. So we're still working on that, Matt, as you know. But when we get a bit lower down and we get good intros, referrals, or the calls go well. But it's just making sure we've got a steady drip of leads, so we and the right leads. So then the second part can take effect.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on to the future now. So obviously, I've sort of alluded to before, we are in the process of sort of relaunching sort of iota-ML 2.0, if you will. What can people watch this video? What can brands expect from iota in the next 6, 12, 18 months in terms of the platform itself?
Yeah, well, the vision we had for the product was really like a ecosystem of apps, and these apps would all have different functions depending on what marketing thing you needed to do. So for everyone at home, there's just different flavors of predictions you can build for different contexts and different insighty things. So the goal of it is, again, be able to build smaller audiences that you can engage. And the segmentation side is really level up marketers' knowledge of, well, what customers do they have. I skipped over that earlier, Matt. So another trigger was I became a consultant. Both those brands I have mentioned, I arrived and asked, can you tell me a customer profile that you have? So one was travel, one was automotive, and the response was a bit like, yeah, we have business and we have leisure. I'm like, well, I know that. That's how on the travel one, that's how you sell your tickets. So it's bleeding obvious that's there. And on the other side, it's like, well, yeah, you have like personal buyers of vehicles, and then you have people buying pools of vehicles, like a big corporate who wants a collection of cars for their company. But what wasn't emerging was beneath that. So okay, you have leisure buyers, personal buyers. Which segments? Like tumbleweed blew across. So that told me there was a lack of customer insight of just who have we got here. And if there's a lack of customer insight, there's no point talking about personalization. Doesn't matter. You can't launch a differentiation strategy if you simply just don't know who you've got. So look, so the ideas with iota were a predictive analytics platform that's got some different features for different contexts, and a kind of an insights element. Where we're sort of taking that to next is a bit of an upgrade on probably two fronts. A couple of additional apps, so adding to the product set. And where I'm taking this to is that iota, I want it to be more alive. So we're building native apps for Apple and Android. So our platform will be a web platform, but it will have some intelligent notification features. So the bit I'm trying to get across is that data is very fluid. It's like always new data coming in, always interesting things in there, but this is something marketers don't always see. So we've got what we're building today is more intelligent notifications that will be like, just to give you a simple example, when the data loads, we can say, hey Matt, guess what? There's more segment A's this week than last week. Like, does that mean something to you? You might go, oh yeah, right. We did some campaign over there, and it's flooded a new segment of consumers in there. As a marketer today, you would never know. Got no clue unless you were looking for it. So imagine like alerting capability that is about leveling up marketers' knowledge of what data do they have, who's ready to buy, what content should you send. All of these things will be running in a more automated way to provide this notification experience. That's one of the key ones. And if I translate this a bit more seriously, I'm determined that iota will not be a dusty piece of tech. Okay, lots of MarTech is dusty, unused tech. It has utilization of 1%. So if you look at a big marketing cloud, probably like marketer jumps on once a week, maybe does something. The rest of the time it's dormant. Marketers will come back at me and say, yeah, I've run triggers and there's these things going on. I know, but for the most part, it's not pushed to its limits. I invite all viewers to go off and look at, there's some Gartner statistics that are really interesting. It kind of goes like this. Year 2020, big survey about only like 40% of marketers say they use their whole tech stack. The following year, it's only 32%. The most recent year is like 30%. So there's this kind of downward trajectory of too much tech, too complicated, and the conclusion is that the marketers don't use it. So I'm determined that we won't be in that space. We'll build a platform that they can use, but the platform comes to them. So that's one of the experiences we hope to build. And then the last part is really like what I would call AI enrichment. So we are a machine learning brand. For clarity, we are about taking first-party data that you have and building machine learning models that let you target consumers more effectively in smaller groups. It tells you what content to send them, and so on and so forth. Like if you follow these predictive audiences, your engagement will go up because everything will become more relevant. Where we add some enrichment is a bit more like it's from an area of, I would call it synthetic data, Matt. So synthetic data is knowledge contained in a language model. This is what an AI is. So to give a simple example of that is, imagine an enrichment that says, if I say to you, hey, here's an audience that you should sell, I don't know what, spades to. And you'll go, oh, John, thanks for this. I now know who to sell this spade to. You don't really know anything about the motivational drivers of why does someone buy this product. So you're a little bit limited in what you can put into your campaign copy or CTAs or how you can position it. So if you see what I'm saying, there's the generation of the audience, but there's the extra step of, well, from a data-driven level, now you've identified this group of people. How can we use an AI to say, these are the spade buyers? By the way, I've got gardeners outside. That's why I've thought of it. Spade buyers versus non-spade buyers. What does a language model know about what the different motivations would be for the product purchase? So if we add this kind of enrichment step that will say, marketer, here's your audience. These are the IDs. This is what you need to do. And if you're lacking inspiration about how to position the product or what you should talk about, here's what AI will say about it. So it's kind of that extra step of like, what do you say and how do you say it? So we're trying to push the product into this space. So what's the conclusion, Matt? A notification experience that's far richer, new apps, but with a degree of AI enrichment to overcome, if marketers feel overwhelmed with how to sell a product or lacking a bit of an insight, how do we automate some of this? We won't be an AI brand, but we will begin to enrich, machine learning generated audiences with this type of knowledge.
Look, fantastic. I think the roadmap and the future roadmap is clear. Obviously, I've always admired what you do with IOTA today, and obviously where you want to take it in the future. I think it's great, and obviously I have full belief that you'll get there. So, but let's end this on a bit more of a lighthearted note now. Obviously, you as I said, you work many different projects, fingers in many pies, very focused on IOTA. You must have some downtime. So what does downtime look for John Conway? What do you do when the laptop gets shut down for that half an hour period?
Well, Matt, I've got two kiddies, 6 and 2.
Yes.
The 6-year-old is, he's 6, so his social life is already overtaking mine. Becoming that dad that has to bring him everywhere all the time. But no, I spend time with my kids, Matt. So I two answers. Spending time with my kids. My son's into things I was into, so he likes bike riding and whatnot. I love mountain bikes. In the room next to me is 4 mountain bikes that are all like vintage.
Nice.
I'm too scared to ride them in case I get mugged. So I've got like vintage bikes from the 90s that, as a school kid, that I was like, I've got to have that at some point in my life. Matt, I went back as an adult and bought those bikes, and they sit in there, and now I'm too afraid to ride them in case a stone chip, happens on paint or something like that. But anyway, look, so collecting bikes, biking, playing football with my son. My daughter's 2, and she's showing signs of my level of like focus and attention to detail. So she's already looking like an engineer of the future. So with my daughter, it's
nice.
like building things, unbuilding it, and immediately putting it back together again. So she's maybe she's a data scientist of the future. But I'll finish by saying that some of what I said at the start of this call has come true. So we do, the children came, and I do make a point of breaking off, in summer break. So last 3 years at least, I've worked through the year, of course, but I've managed to do that whilst being a bit of a nomad. So while the kiddies are around in the summer, traveled extensively through like Europe and some long haul and whatnot. So we just bring the kids. It means I have to code at night sometimes and do some of those things. But that earlier piece of the freedom, I'm determined that is part of it. So but basically winter's a bit of a lockdown. You get the kiddies through their kindergartens and schools and all the things that they're doing. But when the summer comes around, we like to travel. So I suppose it's bikes and travel, Matt, to conclude.
Absolutely, mate. Well, you've hit one of the nails on the head there, haven't you? About being self-employed, being able to have that time to spend with your family. So look, I think that's it now. So look, let's wrap up for today. John, absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us on Paramount Profiles. And hopefully in 4, 5, 6 months, we'll get you back on and we can talk about how IOTA 2.0 is going and talk about some of the successes that has brought. But for now, John, thanks for joining us, mate.
Thank you, Matt. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye. So a massive thank you to John for being my first guest on Paramount Profiles. I always love talking to John about business and iota-ML, and I'm sure you'll agree that his passion really comes through when he talks about IOTA and where he wants to take it in the future. Now, if you want more information on IOTA or on Paramount Sales, I put all the necessary links in the video description below. So if you're either watching this on YouTube or you're listening on your chosen podcast provider of choice, please feel free to press that like button, subscribe for further content, or leave your feedback by commenting, as long as it's positive, of course. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon for the next episode of Paramount Profiles. Cheers.